I'm Ed Hume, and this is Gardening. On today's program, we're going to talk about planting beans and corn. And my special guest is my grandson, Holland. And he knows a lot about planting. He's seeded out marigolds and quite a few other plants as well. So he's going to give me a hand this morning. Holland, do you like corn? You do, okay. And you know how to plant it? Okay, let me give you some seeds, and you go ahead and get started, and Grandpa will also do some seeding as well over here. Now, I like to I dropped a couple seeds there. I kind of like to do it this way. I like to place the seeds out on the soil, and usually put a couple, because then you can thin out one of them, of the weaker of the two. And, okay, there's an ant there, but that ant won't hurt you. Don't worry about that. If you don't hurt it, it won't hurt you. So I'll space them about a foot apart in each direction. And Holland over there is going to do the same. Now, Holland, you show us how are you going to plant the corn? You're going to put it in and then just kind of push it in the soil and pull the soil in over it. And see, that's very important. He barely covered the seed with soil. Too often we seed too deeply, and that's really not the good way to do it. You've got to just barely push the seed in and then cover over, just as Holland did. He's doing it exactly the right way. And by spacing them this way now, and you always plant corn, by the way, in blocks. That's for pollination, so that there isn't the cross-pollination between varieties. Here's the seed that we dropped, Holland, so I'm going to put 2 there. Why don't you put 2 there, and we'll put 2 here. And we're not going to plant this whole bed into corn, are we? At all. What's your favorite way to eat corn?
Like this.
Eat it? Okay. Eat right off the cob? Oh, yeah, good idea. Okay, now you plant those, and then would you hand me that top package of seeds down there? Because we're going to plant next beans. And this is a pole bean. Will you help me pull in some soil? Show the folks how we do this? Because we're forming a kind of a hill here, aren't we? And we'll level it off. And then this, by the way, is Oregon giant beans. And this is by far our favorite. Myrna and I really like this one. So, in this hill, and by the way, you could soak these seeds if you wanted to for, probably an hour or so before you seed them. It's not necessary, but it's not a bad, what? Okay, do you want to give me the other one too? Okay, we'll do that next. Here, why don't you plant this hill, and so you take all the seed, and I'd plant one there, and maybe one here, and one here, and one here, and one here. Put about 5 or 6, okay? Now, once again, you notice how he did that. He barely covered the seed. Yeah, that's number 1. That's what, 2? Okay. Now, 3. Okay, now you better put 3 over here too now, okay? And because this is on, there's number 4. Because this is on a hill, we would put the posts in as well.
Yeah, I want to 5.
Okay, you want one more? Whoops, there it is. Fell right on the soil. Gonna put it right in there, okay? Now, this is...
That's an ant. I don't know what insect is.
Okay, I think it's just an ant, and it won't hurt anybody as long as we don't hurt it. On the end here now, we're gonna plant bush beans. And by the way, on this Oregon giant, we would put in a whole bunch more, and we will, hills of it. It's because it is our favorite. But next we're going to plant the bush beans, and we'll plant them very close together, won't we, Holland? And I've selected in this particular variety the Blue Lake bush because it's a white seed and very easy to see, and it's a good variety too on top of that. You want some more seeds? Scatter them out just a little bit more than what you're doing there, okay? Not all together. Now, see, we want to kind of scatter them like that, okay? Can you do that for Grandpa, please? Okay, just like that. Yeah, there you go. Very good. And we'll take these that are a little bit too close together, Holland, and why don't you help me spread them out? Do you like beans, too? Holland? Do you like beans? What kind of beans do you like? How do you like them? Cooked or, oh, yeah, okay, that's good. Have you grown beans before? Not at all. Okay. Now, see, our viewers, they can see you shake your heads, but you can also talk and tell Grandpa if you want to. You don't have to shake your heads only. Okay, let's talk also, or let's show also. Let's get a few more of these, by the way, spread out. And by the way, the reason why Holland and I are doing it this way is that we want the beans to grow individual plants. And we also want to get a very heavy yield. If we were to plant them in rows, and if you're limited in rows, you can plant them in rows. But if not, if you're limited in space like I am here, then we plant them in the wide open bed like this. I think I said that wrong. If you're limited for space, you plant them in the wide row like I'm doing here, so you get a much heavier yield. If you've got lots of space, then you can plant them in the rows. Okay, I'll get that straight yet. Now, is what we'll do in this particular case, kind of like what we did before when we planted the peas. We'll just push the bean in, Olin, and barely cover it, okay? You're doing a good job there. You've done this before, so you know exactly how to do it, don't you? What kind of vegetables do you like besides beans, Holland?
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes? Okay, that's a good vegetable. Tell me some others.
Carrots.
Carrots, that's a...
Maybe I should get those.
Which ones?
Oh yeah, tomato.
Okay, tomato.
I think that's it.
Do you like potatoes? Okay. What do you like berries, like strawberries? Mm-hmm. What would you eat strawberries with? As a dessert, or how would you eat them?
With
With
beans.
beans? You're kidding me. You don't eat beans with strawberries, do you? I think you're pulling my leg. Well, you might. Okay, you might eat them as a dessert. Have the beans with your meal and then eat the strawberries as a dessert. I don't know about that even. Okay, basically you've seen what we've done here. Now there's about 10 rows wide here, so we're going to get about 10 times the yield we normally would from an individual row of beans. So this little limited area is going to present us with a lot of bush beans, and this is a bush variety if I didn't mention it before, so it will stay very low. So that gives you an idea of how to plant beans and corn. My special thanks to my grandson Holland for helping me this morning. Thank you, Holland. And I'll be back with more on gardening after these messages. Let's talk a little bit about planting containers in a sunny spot. And I'm starting here with a ceramic container. You could use wood or plastic if you wanted to. I like to use as a soil mixture commercial potting soil, because then you don't introduce any kind of insects or disease, nor do you introduce weeds either. So there's many advantages to it. Plus, it's a completely balanced soil as well. Whoops, I need a little more than that. Put that in, okay. And I think one of the best ways to start is to start in the center and then work out. So as a center planting here for a sunny spot now, this is in bright sun, I'm going to use a variegated geranium. This is a variety, by the way, called Hollywood Star. And I'll loosen the roots a little, like so, just so that they can go into the surrounding soil, and we'll put that right in the middle of the container. Isn't that a nice plant? Always look for a nice bushy plant, and if you can, also for some that form the buds as well, or have buds forming on them. I'll say it right yet. Also then, I'm going to add a nice marigold to it, and you'll notice this one flower is pretty well done, so I'll just reach in and pick that out. It's pretty well past its peak of bloom. Okay, that'll add a little bit of color. In here in the center, also around the base of the geranium, I'm going to plant this plant, which is a poor man's orchid, or butterfly bush. Again, I got to pull a little more soil. Didn't get quite enough soil. You always want to leave the soil level a little bit below the rim of the container for watering purposes, but not as low as I have left it there. Also in the center here, even though this is a shade plant, I'm planting it in the sun. I'm going to put in a New Guinea impatiens. And I'll loosen the roots just a little tiny bit there. Pull this around just a little more here, like so. Add a little color. These two colors, you know, Mother Nature's colors don't clash, so we won't worry about that. Also then I'm going to put in a petunia. right at the base of that geranium. And I'll do that right here. And then, still got to add a little more soil there. I don't have quite enough to be working with here. Just pull it around a little bit more here. And I want to plant in a dusty miller. Now, the reason why I'm planting the dusty miller is because of the gray foliage of the plant. It's really exceptionally nice. So we'll just pull. Notice the soil is wet, so the dirt clings to the roots. And I'm going to take the biggest of the three plants and plant it right in here. So now what do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plants, okay, around the base, plus the geranium, which is 7. And then I'm going to plant some plants over the edge of the pot that'll trail down. And here's one. This is trailing verbena, which has very pretty flowers. Comes in a whole bunch of different shades, too, so you can pick the color that you want. I want kind of a combination here. I want a big bouquet is what I'm trying to accomplish. So put that down. Again, we'll lift it just a little more. Its soil level is still too darn low. Hope you don't make that same mistake. It's an easy one to make, though, because the soil tends to work its way down as you go along. Also, then I'll put in a creeping Charlie, and it's grown primarily for its variegated foliage, which is very pretty. And you can just tap it out of the pot like that. Loosen the roots a little, take the label out, and we'll let it grow down over the side, like so. And then over here, I'm going to put an ice plant. This one, the flower's kind of out of bloom on this particular one, but you can see it's a cerise color. It is a very pretty plant, and it likes the full, hot, bright sun, as do all the rest of these plants. So we'll tap it out of the pot and just let it trail down over here, like so. Now, going along just a little bit further, we'll put in another trailing plant, and this is the lotus vine. And the lotus vine has red pea-like flowers on it, plus this beautiful texture. And the foliage alone, is well worth a sunny spot in a container. See, I better come around here a little bit further, closer to maybe to this impatiens for this one. Put it right here. And then, oops, I got a little bit too much soil there, not enough soil there. You have to kind of work with that, as you can see. And then next I'm going to put over the edge here a plant that's called the Livingston daisy. And it has a beautiful fluorescent kind of daisy-like flower, and it's just gorgeous. So I'm going to put that in here next. And then I'm going to come back around here a little bit further, and I'm going to put a blue trailing lobelia over the edge, so that we have lots of color in here. You know, we've got just practically every color of the rainbow in this particular planting, which really makes it nice. And I'm even going to come over here and put in another plant that'll trail down over the edge of the pot. And of course, that's the white alyssum. And you could use the pink or the lavender if you wanted to. So there's several different types to use. Now, let me just turn that up so you can see it. I could add even a few more plants to it. But basically, I haven't counted them exactly, but I think there's about 14 or 15 plants total in there. And the next thing, of course, I would do is to water that in thoroughly. But I'm not going to take the time, because I want to just quickly show you another potential for a bright, sunny area. And that is to use all the same plant. I'll probably have too much soil in that one now. But is what I'm going to do in this one is use all the same variety of, these are ivy geraniums. And the reason why they get the name ivy geranium is that the leaf is like an ivy. This is the one that you see planted so often in Europe, particularly in the Scandinavian, you see them in the Scandinavian countries too, but I was thinking more of in Germany and Austria and places like that. So this is ivy geraniums. Now, I am only going to put 3 plants in this pot. That's what the commercial growers usually use. When I plant them up earlier, I put 5 plants per pot. But you can see how nicely that fills in, and that's going to be a solid mass of beautiful pink blossoms. That's how you plant annuals in a sunny spot, and now's the time to do it. I'll be back with more in gardening after these messages. Let's talk a little bit about spring flowering perennials. But before we do, notice the pansies here. These are winter flowering varieties that have been in bloom almost all winter long whenever there was a warm spell. And now they come in full bloom again when the bulbs are coming in bloom. So they're really nice and have provided lots of color. This is a grouping of hyacinths, and because this is the entry area, these hyacinths, of course, provide excellent fragrance and color as well. They tend to be a stiff formal bulb, so I have them planted in a grouping which takes away the formality a bit. As we make our way up also, notice these red tulips. Aren't they gorgeous? This is a variety called Fosteriana, and I think one thing we need to know about bulbs is that in most climates they can be left in the ground. I leave them here all the time in my garden. In a really cold climate you may have to dig them, but some people think they have to be dug every year, and they sure do not have to be at all. Beautiful variety though, isn't it? And there's a little bit of yellow and black in the center, so it's really outstanding. Moving on up the bed then, here's another cluster of tulips. This happens to be a peony flowered variety, so it has multi-petals on it. And it's an early flowering variety called Monte Carlo. Really pretty, isn't it? Now, it's low growing, so it's in the front, and then the bulbs at the back that are developing here will be different colors, and they will be the taller growing varieties. Now, here's talking about spring perennials, which I intended to do from the beginning. This is the Doronicum daisy, one of the first of the tall daisies to flower. It comes in two sizes, this size and then one that grows just a little bit higher. And the beauty of this is it's a buttery yellow, it's really attractive early in the spring, and it makes a nice cut flower. It has kind of a weak stem though, so you might want to, maybe mix it with some other flowers to help hold it up a bit. But there are 3 plants in there. Keep that in mind. I've used them again in a cluster. I think that's when they're the most attractive. Now here are a couple other perennials that you should know. This, for example, is Erebus. And this is the white flowering variety. It also comes in a pink flowering variety. And I have 3 plants in there, and they've grown together and look like one. Last year when I planted them from a little 4-inch pot. So you can see how much they've grown in a single year. This plant, the Erebus, is very often grown in the rockery because it cascades down over the rocks. But you can see here in the beds how nice it is as a ground cover too. And being perennial, that means that it will continue to come back year after year after year. And in fact, the foliage on this pretty well stays evergreen. So you have the foliage all 12 months of the year. Really a nice one, Erebus, and it comes in the pink and the white. Then back here in the back is another white flowering plant. This is called candytuft, or Iberis is the botanical name. Comes in a really low growing dwarf variety, and then several other varieties that are medium to high in growth. Again, often used in the rockery, but beautiful in the bed. Pure white flowers. Now I have other colored tulips coming in here and some daffodils too. So this white will really make them stand out beautifully. Good combination. More hyacinths again and azalea in there, but look at these. Aren't these gorgeous? This is another low-growing spring perennial. This happens to be one called Aubrietia. Now this comes in several different colors. It comes in a light lavender, comes also in this color, which is kind of a rose red, I guess, and then it also comes in a bright purple. So it's really a nice perennial. It again is a low-growing variety. You'll notice this plant's doing exceptionally well. This one not too bad, but the one in the background not quite as large as either one of the other two. This also is a low-growing perennial. So you could use it in the rockery, or you could use it like I'm using it now as a ground cover, a perennial ground cover. The other thing, though, that you want to keep in mind also about this plant is, and these others too, when they finish flowering, cut them back. Because if you do, they very often will renew with new flowers later in the summer and give you another flowering season. That also keeps the plants bushier. And of course, then you get rid of the dead flowers too, which tend to die back and don't look nearly as attractive either. So it's a good idea to shear them back at the end of their flowering season. Now, the foliage on that usually remains evergreen too. Another cluster of Monte Carlo tulips here, but notice the primroses here. They're kind of getting a little bit ratty, and I think I'd take a few minutes and go in and pick off a few of those flowers and dress them up a little bit. And any of the bad leaves kind of just pick off too. Only takes a minute to do it, and it really makes a difference in the plants unless you're trying to save the seeds. If you want to save the seeds, then that's different. By all means, then in that particular case, you'd just let them go to seed and let them look a little bit ratty. But if you take just those few minutes to kind of dress up your plants, it makes a lot of difference in their appearance. Now, that's only a few of the spring flowering perennials, but gives you an idea of some of the plants that you can use in the garden for added color. I'll be back with more on gardening after these messages. On a program a couple weeks ago, I said I'd be showing you more about the pool on this week's program, but I've been so blasted busy, I really have not had a chance to do anything around the pool other than to fill in the dirt and give it its permanent resting place here. Soon I will be, and hopefully it'll be within the next couple of weeks, I'll be mounding more soil here for the 2-level waterfalls down into the pond. But I just haven't had time for it, and I hope that I do over the next few weeks, can get that done. Also, you'll notice the shrubs here in the background. These are coming out, and I will use plants that are more suitable for a pool setting in this particular area. I think that's very important because so often we have plants that don't really fit into a situation. So we'll use them in another part of the garden and bring in plants that really do suit. So that gives you an idea, and hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll have it all in place for you so you can get a little bit more idea on how to build the waterfalls. That's all the time for today. Have a very pleasant week. Hope you can join me at the same time again next week.